edition of VFL 23. We're up to episode or edition 7. My name's Yeend. I'm joined by the voice of VFL football, particularly after this past week, the great man, Brendan Jonty Rhodes. Rhodesy, how the golden tonsils, mate? Are you feeling all right? You've been the man over the weekend.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I had a bit of luck with a couple of good goals, which managed to sneak into the Smithy snags, which is always a thrill when you can get into the top 6 goals of the week. And yeah, be lucky enough to get 3. I'm pretty happy with, I think. So thanks to the players for actually kicking some rippers in the games that I was doing. What I'm more worried about is the green screen behind you. What's going on? The horse racing. We got a problem with the horses, have we?
No, my better half will be coming home at some stage while this recording's taking place, and she'll come in through there. So I don't think she wants to make a special appearance on the podcast this week. So especially
she doesn't want to improve the quality.
Absolutely. I might just bring ratings through the roof. But we've got bad weather up here this week, so we'll see how we go. I imagine Victoria's
not alone. I took the dog for a walk in the rain this morning here in Melbourne. So
hopefully we get
certainly nothing like what the Lions and Werribee put up with on Saturday out at Springfield.
Yeah, I can imagine that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But mate, we'll provide some insight into the games that we covered on the weekend, and you were the man of the hour. You got the tap on the shoulder to call the season opener between Carlton and Geelong over at Icon Park with the great man Pete Mercado. What were your takeaways from that game?
It wasn't a bad game of football, actually. There was not a lot between the two teams. It was good skill level. It was competitive. There were highlights. There were mistakes. Don't get me wrong. There were plenty of mistakes, as you'd expect in round one. But it pretty much came down to the efficiency of the Cats early on. They kicked the first 5 goals of the game, even though I think at that stage the inside 50s were pretty similar. They just took their chances and ran with them. They got themselves 5 goals up, and they just kept that lead around about 20 points all night. Carlton kicked the last 2 goals of the first quarter, so it was 20 points at quarter time. Every time they got a goal to get within 14, Geelong had the answer. So it was 14, 20, 26, 20, 14, basically for the entire night. And it looked like Geelong had managed to put them away when they got out by 26 points at 3-quarter time. I thought this may be just a bridge too far for the Blues. But they came out, they kicked the first 3 goals of the last quarter, Carlton. And hang on, we've got a game of footy here. It's 8 points. It's a ripper. Thursday night was a ripper in the AFL. We've got a perfect way to start the season. But as happened on the opposite hand on Thursday night, the team that was in front was able to steady and get the job done. So a terrific win against the odds for Geelong, because Carlton did go into that game as clear favourites with more AFL-listed players, more experience. And, yeah, they just could not run down a very committed and very brave Geelong team.
Who are some of your standout players from the Geelong side?
Jai Chalcraft. Simple as that. He was absolutely magnificent. Ended up with 30 disposals, 7 marks, 6 clearances and a goal. Dominated for the whole game. He's the reigning best and fairest winner down there. He just kept racking them up. Whenever Geelong needed someone to do something special, Jai Chalcraft was the one that was there, and he got it done. Brandon Parfitt, he was playing his first VFL game since 2017 and only his second game altogether. His first half was absolutely magnificent. I think he had 18 touches in the first half. And yeah, just looked a class above the level. You think he won't be in the VFL for too long. He ended up, I think, on a little bit of controlled minutes or managed minutes in the second half. Carlton put a little bit more work into him and quietened him down. He finished with 23 and 8 clearances. So it was a quiet finish for him, but looked very, very good in the first half. One that I did like was Harry Benson. We'll talk about him. He was making his VFL debut. He's won 2 best and fairest in the Geelong League in the last 2 years. Steps up to give the VFL a go, ends up with 19 and 6 clearances right in the action, and was on the bottom of the pack more often than not, which is great to see. And he's going to be a really good player for Geelong. And for Cats fans, for the AFL fans, Ollie Dempsey, his 3 goals were very, very important in the big moments as well. And I think Ted Clohessy kicked 3 in the first half, one of the academy youngster who was brought in as a Category B rookie.
Fantastic, and Rhodesy doesn't know this as well, but me asking this question is also giving me an insight into who I'm going to look out for this weekend, because I actually do have Geelong on Sunday over at Heritage Stadium, so there's a little bit of homework for me. Thanks, mate, you've helped me out there.
Definitely keep an eye out for those guys, because Chalcraft in particular, number 57, he is a star.
And he'll tear it up on the big stage over at Heritage Bank Stadium. And who are some of the players from Carlton that you enjoyed watching on the night, especially when they made a comeback late in the game?
Well, Lockie Plowman was massive in the first half, as I mentioned. No problems there. He had 22 disposals in the first half, finished with 29 for the game. I think he only took about 4 marks, but his game was sensational. Getting Carlton back into it, keeping Carlton in it when Geelong was in control early. Then it was the midfielders who took over to drag them back and to almost get them over the line. Paddy Dow, we know he's a class above the VFL. Unfortunately, he seems to be one of those ones that's caught in the middle. Mm-hmm. He ended up with another 30 disposals, 6 marks and 10 clearances. A star performer from him. Jack Carroll had 25. And 7 marks and 9 inside 50. So these guys are guys who can come in and play good footy in the AFL if required. The late inclusion to the list, Alex Sincotta, really, really good. And I did like their new draftee. I think he might have been their top pick, Jackson Binns, in the draft last year. He had 21, 7 marks and 5 inside 50. So he was very, very good. But Carlton did have 7 of the top 9 ball winners on the ground and still lost the game. So they need to be a little bit cleaner with their ball use going forward, and give the big forwards a chance, because we know about Mackay and Curnow in the AFL. They've got a young fella by the name of Harry Lemmy, who's another new draftee in the VFL. He ended up kicking 1 goal, but they just need to get it into him and give him a chance. Him and Hudson O'Keefe, the other SSP selection, get it in there and give the big boys a chance. Fantastic, mate. It's
we look at the fact that it is round 1. Teams are going to be overusing the ball just a little bit more, but they've had 4 weeks. Well, essentially 3 weeks of practice matches. Some of them have made the most of that extra week. So we'll see how they progress. I had probably one of the more interesting games on the weekend that really is impacted by the severity of what's happening in the AFL, and it's only going to get worse this weekend, particularly with St Kilda playing the Mighty Bombers. But I had Sandringham and Southport coming into the season. Well, their pre-season, they had 1 win over Palm Beach Currumbin with their under-22 side. This was essentially, aside from playing Brisbane, this was their first genuine hit out as a group. In their, I guess, their quest to go that one step further. But they played Sandringham, who had 6 AFL listed players, with Cooper Sharman the most experienced one out of that group, and 9 VFL development players. And as you know, Rhodesy, the VFL sides have to play a minimum of 3 VFL development players. Sandringham, due to the influx of injuries to the St Kilda Football Club lineup, they've had to field 9, which means that 6 players got to wear the Guernsey for the first time, with 3 of them debutants. Sandringham were probably on a hiding to nothing before they even went out on the field, and I guess the aim for them was just to be competitive.
Yeah, and there was no surprise in the result, and no shame in the result, although there's no doubt that Jake Batchelor would be disappointed that the Zebras weren't able to kick a goal in the first half. They did fight things out a little bit better in the second half and got 4 on the board. But yeah, from what I saw bits and pieces of it. You could tell me a lot more, but it was an ominous display from Southport. Their biggest name of all racked them up again, and their biggest recruit racked them up too, which you can tell us about. But yeah, a very good display from Southport. They put an undermanned team to the sword, as you'd expect them to.
Absolutely. Well, we talk about there was Jackson Edwards on debut in the VFL, formerly from West Adelaide in the SANFL. He was probably, for me, he would have got the 2 votes. He just racked up over 20 touches, just had a field day running through the midfield. Great left footer. But for me, in terms of work rate, Jesse Joyce, the number 25, he was outstanding across half back, even pressed forward, was able to kick a goal. They were a good team unit, but the thing we've come to expect from Southport is they get goals really quickly. So they'll get you 3 or 4 in a row really quick, and then there might be some time between that. That gives the opportunity for the opposition to sort of get in. There was a moment in the third quarter where Sandringham started to hit the scoreboard a little bit. They had a shot on goal from one of their players that just missed. If he was successful, would have cut the margin back to 6 goals after they were probably 8 or 9 down. It would have changed in a big way. But of course, as we know through footy, sometimes, Rhodesy, some of these chances that you don't take, ball goes down the other end, we have the 2-goal swing. Southport put the game to bed. Zach Foote, 4 goals. He was absolutely outstanding, really quick, made the most of his opportunities. But again, with Southport, at one stage in the first quarter, I think they had 9 inside 50s, and they had 7 scoring shots. So we're seeing their effectiveness inside that forward 50. Once they get it in there, the only time it sort of tends to come out is more often from a set of bounce after a goal.
Exactly, and their dominance is shown on the stat sheet when they had 11 players pick up more than 20 touches and ended up with, I think, almost 200 more disposals than Sandringham in the game, which is absolutely unheard of. There, as you mentioned, some great performances there. Congratulations to Max Spencer on his 50th VFL game as well in that contest, and he was one of those who had 20 and took 7 marks. So yeah, 7 goals to none in the first quarter just sums it up, doesn't it? It puts the game to bed, doesn't give the opposition a chance to get into it and get their confidence up. And yeah, from what I can gather, if it wasn't for Tom Highmore, it could have been a little bit uglier. Yeah,
exactly. He played a key role across half-back and sort of deep inside that defensive 50, but there was plenty of opportunities that went down there. I do want to give a shout-out to a couple of players in particular. I want to give a shout-out to Ollie Lowe in the number 59 Guernsey. He did some really good things across half-back. Didn't rack up as many disposals, but he was very effective and moved around the ground really well. And a big shout out to the debutant, Will Dunn, number 79. He did really well. There was 2 big spoils that he made using his left hand, which is his opposite hand. And when I was looking at the team sheet, I was like, this guy's surely played a lot of games. And then I found out it was his debut. But my feeling was, at the end of the day, it's a premonition that we're going to be seeing a lot of Will Dunn in the back 50 for Sandringham for a long while to come. So they had some young players in there. They worked their backsides off, and a lot to like about them going forward. Mate, you had the flag unfurling. You've got to pull double duties on Saturday. You were over at Casey Fields. Tell us a little bit about that and who were some of the standouts.
Yeah, you got a chance to back up again on Saturday, and it was a brave performance by Footscray. You have to say. Casey had 14 AFL listed players to the Bulldogs 7. The Demons really should have put the game away in the first quarter, but some of their kicking for goal was terrible. They ended quarter time at 1-7 to Footscray's 1-1. And while people who weren't there might think it was the wind at Casey, which we know what it can do, it was perfect. It was perfectly still, perfectly calm conditions. There were no excuses. The Demons were just wonky. And the second and third quarters, or probably from about quarter time through to about halfway through the third quarter, the 2 teams pretty much went goal for goal. And at one stage, I think midway through the third quarter, it was 2 points the difference. And it really looked like Footscray was a chance to put the wind up them. But unfortunately, from then on, Casey just flicked the switch. Away they went. They kicked the last 3 goals of the third quarter. That broke the back of the Bulldogs, and another 3-1 in the last saw them run out winners by 37 points, which, given the missed opportunities that they had in the first half, was probably about right. But certainly certainly nothing for Footscray to be ashamed about. And when they get some players back, they'll be a much better team for it. I thought the best man on the ground was Bailey Laurie, who was dropped from the AFL team the previous week. He was absolutely everywhere as the link-up man. Ended up with 29, 7 marks and 6 inside 50s. His mate in the middle was James Jordan, who was the sub in the 2021 grand final. He had 28, was very, very good. Luke Dunstan had 29 and a heap of others as well. Michael Hibberd, people would say that potentially he was best on ground. He ended up with 36 disposals and 10 marks across the last line of defence. Obviously, absolutely critical. But as I said, I just thought the Laurie and Jordan probably had bigger impacts in the game than Hibberd. The big men, very good as well. I really like the game of Jacob Van Rooyen. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets an AFL debut very shortly. 19 disposals, 11 marks and a goal, playing around the ground was terrific. The other draftee, Matt Jefferson, he finished with 4 behinds, I think, but looked very dangerous in the air. Another debutant draftee, Oliver Seston, kicked 3 really good goals. And well, it wouldn't be a Jimmy Munro game without an absolute shies and load of tackles. He had 16 tackles to go with 12 disposals. So he had 4 more tackles than he actually touched the footy. That's Jimmy Munro. I love watching the bloke play. He is fantastic. For Footscray, Lockie Sullivan in his 50th game, the captain, he was the leader. He had 27 touches, 7 marks, 9 clearances. Brilliant game again. But I want to send out a real shout out to a couple of young players. I've seen Cooper Craig Peters play a handful of games for Footscray over the last couple of years. This was by far his best performance that I have seen. He only had 19, laid 5 tackles, 6 inside 50s, but he was on the bottom of the packs. He was tackling at crucial stages. He was throwing himself at the contest. His game, well, he was named best by Footscray over Sullivan, and that doesn't surprise me at all because his game was magnificent. Another young player in Joel Garner, who was on Port Adelaide's list in 2021, very good as well. Ewan McPherson, the son of Steve, I reckon he had the best game I've seen him play for Footscray. Mitch Hannon kicked a couple of spectacular goals and took a Smithy screamer as well. We need to get them onto the website. And Luke Cleary, very good down back, and Jason Johannesson did some nice things off half back and shouldn't be too far away from the AFL side again. And
a big shout out to Craig Peters, the Craig Peters family, Cooper. I'd had the pleasure of doing some media work with the young fellow when I was working with the Ballarat Football Netball League, and there was big raps on what he was able to achieve from a very young age as well. So from a personal perspective, to hear that his dominance on the day and making some really good inroads at VFL level from round 1, that's a testament to the wonderful work that he's done, and I know the Ballarat Football Netball League community are right behind him.
Yeah, no, it was terrific. As I said, easily the best game I've seen him play at VFL level. So good on him. Hopefully he can build on that, grow with that, and become a really important player for the Bulldogs.
Well, there, ladies and gentlemen, is an insight into the people that call the game and provide the analysis. I mean, that's the job of callers. But you are listening and watching VFL 23. Make sure you check us out on Spotify. We've got across all the platforms, iHeartRadio, iTunes, all those things that you can jump on. And we know iTunes is blowing up with all the coverage they get. So make sure you subscribe to us on that one. Now we're going to turn our attention to the top takeaways from the weekend, mate, and sort of more questions without notice or insights without notice. We're looking at some of the highlights from the VFL and the VFLW. What were some of your key takeaways from the weekend?
I'll go up to Brisbane for the first one and really send a shout out to Werribee, who have been underachievers over the past 2 years, as I've mentioned on this show in the past. What a fantastic performance from them, taking on a team who, if they're not premiership favourites, they're the second favourites in the Brisbane Lions on their home ground as they try to christened Brighton Homes Arena and Michael Voss Oval with a win in their first game on that. And Werribee took it right up to them. They led by 23 points at halftime. The Lions wore them down and got the win by a point in the end. But the last 10 minutes, I watched the last 10 minutes, and Werribee was absolutely dominant at the end, and they just couldn't find the centre opening to get that winning goal. So they showed that if they play that sort of football, then they're going to be able to find that finals position that their list demands. It's a really hard start to the season for them. Brisbane Lions in Brisbane, the bye this week, and then Southport at Southport in round 3. So the first 2 games up north makes it tough for them to get a good start when they haven't been good starters, but that's a really good sign. So a big takeaway out of that one was the form of Werribee against the Lions, and credit to the Lions for being able to find a way to get over the line when they probably weren't the best team in the game.
I think...
Checking out the scores, I think Werribee did lead 67-54 late in the game, and but when the team list of Brisbane Lions come out on even Thursday night, I think on their website, you just looked at it and gone, how far are they going to win? That's just the calibre of the talent they've got. They can basically fill 2 quality AFL teams with their position. Another interesting insight with that game too is that there were severe storms in the area, and there was concerns that the game may not have actually finished because of the impending thunderstorms approaching the Springfield region. Thankfully, the weather held off because we got a banger of a finish.
Yeah, it was the last 10 minutes that I watched. It was absolutely pouring down, and you would think those conditions, because it would have been warm as well, I'm guessing.
Correct.
You would have forgiven Werribee for falling away, but for them to actually dominate the last 10 minutes in classic Queensland conditions is a really good boost for them, and something that they can build on, even if they do. Even if they are 0-1 now, and will start underdogs in round 3 against the Sharks.
One of the key takeaways for me for the weekend is we saw a barnstorming finish. I did get a chance to watch some of the highlights, but in the VFLW, where the Bombers unfurled their 2022 premiership flag, and the rivalry that has promised so much and delivered so much in the Hawks-Bombers capacity for decades, we certainly got the epic finish where we saw a draw 4-3-27 to 3-9-27 on Sunday morning as I guess the warm-up game for the VFL game. But I think it would have been hard in your mouth stuff for everyone that got there early to see a classic game.
And again, this was another one that I noticed that it was close and got a chance to watch most of the last quarter. And yeah, just 2 quality teams. And amazingly, they played a draw around about the 2nd or 3rd last game last year, heading into the finals, when Boxhill was, of course, still called Hawthorn. In between, the Bombers belted them in a qualifying final, 60-7. But 2 games out of 3, 6 months apart, have ended in tight draws. I think they were 31 each last time, 27 each this time. Both teams have a claim to have won that game.
Yep.
Essendon, well, they were playing at home. They had the biggest lead of the game. They led by, I think it was by 14 points or 11 points at halftime. They led by, which is the biggest lead of the game. So they'd be disappointed to go scoreless in the 3rd quarter and let the Hawks catch up. On the same token, the Hawks will say, well, we kicked 3 goals, 9. So we had 12 scoring shots to 7. We had 21 more inside 50s, and we couldn't get across the line. So they'll be extremely confident that they can do better when they get another crack at the Bombers later in the year.
How about the effort from Maddy Boyd, the former, I think she played, I'm going to say the Cats, I think she played at the Giants too. Comes down, kicks a lazy 3 goals. All 3 goals there for the Hawks. She had 17 touches and she had a game-high 8 marks, which was by far the best individual performance, probably of the round in the AFLW. you can't expect much more than that. I think from what we've seen from the Hawks, and we've talked them up during the pre-season, they're certainly, the way they've loaded up, they're certainly coming. They've got some great depth coming through with the talent they've got from around the country. And when we do see the AFLW draft come up very soon, they've got a lot of quality players to pick from. It's going to be a great season for them in the VFLW, and we're going to expect great things from the AFLW. So if this is a sign of things to come, look out, the Hawks are coming.
Well, we asked the question a couple of weeks ago when we did the previews about how Essendon and Boxhill would go now that their AFLW players have sort of stepped up to the higher grade, and we got our answer. They're both going to be very, very good football teams again. A big kudos to Nicole Garner talking about Boxhill. I think she's the captain or vice captain this year at the Hawks. The Bombers made one last effort to steal the points, and Nicole Garner was standing right on the goal line as the fullback took the saving mark, cleared the ball, and saved 2 points for her team. And also back on the other side, Essendon. Big shout out to Mia Ray Clifford as well, who became the first player to play 100 VFLW games in this contest, and well, certainly one she's not going to forget in a hurry. Hey, with a draw.
Definitely not at all. And before we talk up this weekend's games, what's one last big takeaway from you across either competition?
Well, one last big takeaway across either competition. Putting me on the spot here. I'll give another shout out. I'll give shout outs to one from each comp.
Yep.
North Melbourne
Yep.
in the VFLW have never made the finals. I did say in the preview that if they could go down and beat Geelong in round one, they could really set up their season to have a crack at the top six for the first time. They did that. They went down, they beat the Cats by 9 points, which was a fantastic performance down there at Deakin Uni. So look out for North Melbourne. They've got a good team this year. They're going to go all right. And across in the men's, Northern Bull Ants again, blown away. They got the TV game. And there was, I suppose, some question marks around it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Channel 7's given a standalone club a TV game in round one, and they would have been questioning it at quarter time when it was 7-1, and I think at halftime it might have been 10 or 11-1. So there was some question marks around it that they've got themselves a pretty ordinary game of football, and they might ditch the Bull Ants. But what happened in the second half? The Northern Bull Ants came out after halftime. They kicked 7 goals, 5 to 6-4. They won the half. They cut the final margin back to 47 points against a team that's going to be contending for the finals. Young Kaylin Bradkey, the Richmond's SSP selection, unstoppable in the first half with 6 kicks and 5 goals, finished with 8 disposals and didn't kick another goal. So they managed to shut him down. So well done to Richmond, a good, comfortable victory to start. But the Northern Bull Ants once again showed that they're not going to be a pushover in season 2023.
Magnificent. Well, you are listening to VFL 23. You've got Rhodesy and you've got Yeendy. Just going to go through quickly go through the fixtures that we've got for this weekend. I'll start with the VFLW, and then I'll get your thoughts across both comps. Saturday, we've got Carlton in the VFLW taking on Geelong over at Icon Park. That's going to be a big game. So we've got Boxhill taking on the Western Bulldogs, North Melbourne taking on Williamstown, Port Melbourne taking on Collingwood, and then on Sunday we've got Casey Demons and Darabin, and then the Southern Saints in the rematch of last year's grand final over at Trevor Barker Oval taking on Essendon. Your pick of the games that weekend, mate, that's going to be one to keep your eyes on.
2 games that I'm really looking forward to here. One, of course, is the grand final rematch between the Southern Saints and Essendon at Wilson Storage Trevor Barker Beach Oval, the longest name in football. The Saints were outstanding in thrashing Darabin at the weekend. They won by the biggest margin of the round. I think it was 46-14 or something along those lines. So a terrific start to the year for the Saints. They will be desperate to test themselves against Essendon. Remember, they went goalless in that grand final, so they'll be still stinging from that. They do have a bit of a new look team. Both teams, of course, new look. I think Essendon had 11 new players at the club in the game against Boxhill Hawks. But that's going to be an absolute cracker. You've got to lean towards Essendon, and as I said last week, you lean towards Essendon until they get beaten. Really.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is North Melbourne and Williamstown. Williamstown had a really good pre-season, as we mentioned, undefeated pre-season. They led Collingwood 13-0 at quarter time in their game on the weekend, and unfortunately they didn't score again for the rest of the game and ended up losing 28-13. So they'll be wanting to bounce back from that against a North Melbourne team who we just mentioned had a very good game first up. Williamstown, I think, did beat them in the pre-season, so they'll be confident of repeating the dose. But at Arden Street, I'm going to go for the Kangaroos. In the other games, you would think the Western Bulldogs. A shout out to them as well that I gave to the Northern Bull Ants. The Bulldogs had 0 wins and a percentage of 16 last year. They were in the game against the Casey Demons all day. Ended up falling short by 14 points out at Ballarat. So they had 14 recruits playing in that game. So it's a totally new look team. But yeah, it looks like the Western Bulldogs are on the up, which is great to see. I can't see them beating Boxhill, but yeah, they'll be a little bit better this year, I think. I'm going to go for Collingwood to beat Port Melbourne at ETU Stadium. I'll go for Carlton to beat Geelong at Icon Park, and after Carlton, of course, had a big win over Port on the weekend, and the Casey Demons, I think, should be too good for the Darebin Falcons out at Casey Fields. For VFLW supporters, that game is on Casey Radio on Sunday afternoon, so you can tune into that. The feature game is Port Melbourne and Collingwood, the one with the commentators on the AFL stream.
Beautiful. And I'll quickly go through the VFL. We've got 4 days of footy, which is great. We start off with Footscray and the Brisbane Lions on Thursday. Then on Friday, we've got Frankston and Williamstown. Then Saturday, we've got 4 big games. North v Southport, GWS v Carlton, Coburg v Richmond, and Port v Collingwood. And on Sunday, we've got Gold Coast v Geelong, Casey v the Swannies, and Sandringham will take on Essendon. Mate, where are you calling this weekend?
I'm a night owl again this week, Yeendy. Yeah. I'm going down to Kinetic Stadium on Friday night. It's Frankston's first game for the year. We look forward to seeing how they're going to fare. They're up against a Williamstown team on the rebound and coming off a tough trip to Queensland where they went down to the Gold Coast Suns. They've got a chance in this one, Frankston. We expect Williamstown to be a big improver, but as we said, the Seagulls have just had a tough trip to Queensland in difficult conditions and lost. And Frankston is very hard to beat on a Friday night down there in front of their big crowd. I'm still going to tip Williamstown, but there's not going to be much in that one. Then Saturday night, I'm at ETU Stadium for Port Melbourne and Collingwood, which is an absolute mouth-watering game. The Borough with a wonderful victory over North Melbourne at Arden Street. Collingwood thrashed Coburg, led by 16 points at halftime and won by 92. So that shows that the ability that Collingwood have got, that should be an absolute classic. I'll wait for selection, but at this stage, maybe just the Magpies based on what they did last week. So they're the 2 games I'm at. A weird time slot, 3:45 on Thursday afternoon at Marvel Stadium, Footscray and the Brisbane Lions. I'm going for the Lions in that one. They look like a very hard team to beat. I'm going to take Southport to beat North Melbourne down here. But North Melbourne is a big chance, and that's probably the match of the round, I think. Mm-hmm. GWS had a shocker last week back at home against Carlton. I'm going to say they'll bounce back, the Giants, and I'll take them in a thriller. I think Richmond should be too good for Coburg at Piranha Park on Saturday afternoon. Coburg a bad loss, Richmond a good win over the Bull Ants. Gold Coast Suns, I think, will beat Geelong up there at Heritage Bank Stadium in the curtain raiser. And I think the Casey Demons should be too good for Sydney. And I'm going to go for Essendon to beat the undermanned Sandringham at Trevor Barker Oval. Where are you at?
I will have the pleasure, because I'm the only Gold Coast caller in the VFL, Queensland caller in the VFL, so I'll be over at Gold Coast and Geelong nice and early, and then I'll tuck into the senior men's that'll happen a few hours later. You have been listening to VFL 23. Rhodesy, thanks so much for jumping on board, mate. It's pretty exciting times, and it's great to hear your insights into the game, especially given you are a caller and you're a sensational writer.
Cheers, mate. Always great to talk to you. We'll speak next week.
No worries. You've been listening to VFL 23. Catch us next week as we highlight the success of round 2 and preview round 3. We'll catch you then.